Okay, so we've built our basic application. We've set it up initially. We've added a button and the text gets updated on screen every time we click the button. Let's extend that functionality a little bit further now and also demonstrate some other good software development practices as well as some functionality for clips that is going to save you a lot of time when you're developing. Let's get into it. Okay, so here we are in the project as we left it. And just to confirm the functionality, if we run it as it is right now and click on the button, it updates the text on the screen and that's it. And of course, if we click on the settings menu item, we get the message temporarily before it disappears. Okay, so let's extend this a little bit further. I think a good idea might be to record the number of clicks the button has had. So why don't we record that? So the first thing to do is to think, what would be the best place to store those clicks? Now, probably wouldn't be in main activity, and that's because the button, most of the functionality of the button is actually in our on-click listener. If you think about it, how would we know if there's a button click from the main activity? We've done our initialization, we've set up the on-click listener, we've told the button when there's an event what code to execute, our on-code listener, but we don't know effectively within the main activity when that button is clicked. So the place we want to put the code is in our on-click listener because of course we've got a direct link to when the button is being clicked. So what we'll do is we'll add a private variable called count. And that's going to be the variable that stores how many times the button has been clicked, the count in other words. And we're going to go into the constructor. We're going to initialize it to 0 whenever our on-click listener is created, is initialized. And that is, of course, at the moment when our application is launched. So we're going to do the same. We're going to save it in there. Okay, so the next thing to do is decide where does the count get incremented. So the obvious place, of course, is in the onClick method. And that's because that's called at the moment. It's called automatically every time the button's clicked. So it's an obvious place to put our code to update our count. So we're going to type count equals count plus 1. Now, traditionally, with traditional Java development, we've got an issue here because we want to convert an integer, like a number, to a string. So in the traditional Java, you'd have to do something along the lines of string, temporary result equals integer dot to string count. And then we might do something like the button has been clicked plus temp result, and again I can do control space if I want to, plus times. So that would be one way of doing it, and that will certainly work, and we'll test that. We'll save this and we'll go back and we'll run our class again. See it launching in the bottom right hand corner. Tab over to our emulator. The button has been clicked 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. So you can see that's working fine. But one of the good things about Android is it makes your code a lot easier. Now this set text, in a lot of Java code, the set text would automatically be a string and it would require you to do what I've just done. But this set text, this character sequence, that it automatically merges numbers and strings. So what we can do is get rid of all this altogether, and we can just put count times. As you can see, much easier and much easier to read, and does the same thing. It still works. Okay, so that's pretty easy. We've added a count and we've got the count incrementing. But did you notice the error? So we go back and just run it again. So what I can do is I can run it in the emulator. I can go back and we can start it again. The button has been clicked 1 time. The button has been clicked 1 time. It should be saying 1 time. Of course, when it gets to 2 times is the proper English. But of course, 1 time isn't. So why don't we change that so that it displays the right text irrespective of the number of times it's been called. So one way to do that, we can say if count is greater than equal to 1, else, and I'll just put this in there, then we'll talk about what I've just done. And whoops, that should be equal. So we can say if count equals 1, we're going to display time, else we're going to display times. Because of course if count equals 0, 0 times still makes sense. But 1 time, 2 times, 3 times and so on. So we save that, we check our code. Oops, we'll run it first. So our new version is automatically compiled and sent to our emulator, our Android virtual device. Okay. The button has been clicked 1 time. The button has been clicked 2 times, and so on. So that's working good. But that's really not the most efficient of code because we're duplicating the code. We're displaying it twice. We're effectively changing it twice. So if we wanted to change the message, let's just say we had to put the button itself has been clicked. We would have to go in here twice and do it like so. And it's opening ourselves up to making a typo, or that we've, basically it's bad having code that is duplicated. We want to avoid duplication wherever we can. So the simplest way again would be to go back and use our string again that we initially did in this case, and we'll put we'll call it output string equals. So we're going to go back and do that. Count plus time, and then we're going to put if count equals is not equal to 1, we're going to put output string plus equals s. And then we still need this next line to actually do the outputting, but we'll need to change that a little bit. And this time we're going to put output text. So what have we done here? Well, we've set output string to equal the button itself has been clicked plus and whatever the number of times it has been clicked, and then the word time, and then we've said if the count is not equal to 1, add an s to the end of that string. So plus equal means add something to the end. So in this case we're adding an s. So we'll just go back and we'll save that, and we'll just check that it works. We'll go back to our emulator. The button itself has been clicked 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and so on. So that's a little bit more, it's better programming practice because we're not duplicating our code. So that's a very basic thing that we've added. Now we've added that functionality to show how many times it's been clicked. Wouldn't it be a good idea if we, going back to our emulator again, if when we clicked on the settings button, or the menu item I should say, we also showed the count in there. So let's go and do that. Let's implement that. Okay, so what we're going to do is leave the message as it is. The settings menu item was tapped, but we're also going to put on screen whatever the current value of the text on the text view is equal to. So we can do plus, and what we want to do is this value here, the text view. The text view dot get text. So that should show us on screen exactly whatever that's currently set to. So we're going to save that, and we're going to run it again. Let's check the output. So at the moment it's set to hello world. So if we go to our settings menu item, the settings menu was tapped hello world. So that's good, it's working. We could perhaps change that and put was tapped and the button text is I'll make it like that because it's a little bit more readable, and we'll run that again. Okay, if we tap over to there, the button itself has been clicked one time. The settings menu was tapped, and the button menu text is the button itself has been clicked one time. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we go to settings. The settings menu button was tapped, and the button text is the button itself has been clicked 10 times. So obviously it's working. So there you go. That's one way to get these buttons and items effectively reading the state from each other. So just going back to that code. Go back to the code and having a look. The text view dot get text. That is the code. That's the function that retrieves whatever the value of the set or the get text was equal to. Now, with that said, if we wanted to, it wouldn't necessarily be a good thing to do, but we could put that in here. We could make a change and put the text view dot set text 0. We'll type 0. The word 0. Save that. Go back to emulator, make sure it's closed down. And we'll run this again. Go back to our emulator. Button itself has been clicked one time, but every time we click the settings button, we've said what the state was on the screen, but we've changed it to 0. But of course, when we click on button again, it's still keeping the status of the count and it's adding it up correctly. So there you go. That's really just a way that we've gone through and hopefully explained how to set and do some basic things in Android. Android does sort of really help in some ways. In particular, the bit of code that I showed you here earlier before we changed it, where you don't necessarily have to convert numbers to strings, is really quite handy. It's a good feature that's in a lot of Android stuff. And yeah, very good. All right, well, we've finished our second application. So let's now move on to application number 3.